The waitress was shaking with bruises. Then the Mafia boss said, "Who did this?" The concealer was cheap, the color wrong, it was too pale, caked like dry clay over the violent purple blossoming on my cheekbone. I stood under the flickering fluorescent bulb of the employee restroom, blending the edges with a finger that already ached. The smell of the harbor and hearth was trapped in my uniform, a permanent perfume of burnt coffee, stale grease, and the sour tang of industrial cleaner. Outside the thin wall, the rain hammered the corrugated tin roof, a drumming so loud it vibrated in my teeth. It was the sound of gray water. New Hampshire, a city that always felt like it was drowning. This was my life. June Maddox, waitress, night shift, double shifts paid for a room at the Shoreline Flats, a place that barely deserved the name, and it paid Cal Doyle, the man who owned the building, and, he thought, the people inside it. The restroom door swung open and I flinched. It was just Sal, the cook, grabbing paper towels. He glanced at my face, then looked away. Nobody asked. Asking meant getting involved. I pushed back out onto the floor. The diner was half empty, a few truckers nursing mugs, a couple huddled in a booth. The rain streaked the big plate glass windows, blurring the neon sign into a red haze. I grabbed a fresh pot of coffee, my reflection a ghostly stranger passing over the glass. The bell over the main door didn't jingle. It slammed open, crashing against the wall, letting in a swirl of wet leaves and cold, coastal air. Cal Doyle. He was a big man, soft in the middle, but with a heavy, menacing presence. His flannel jacket was dark with rain, his face flushed. He ignored the "please wait to be seated" sign and stomped straight to the middle of the floor, his eyes locking on me. "Maddox, you're late." His voice was a gravel pit. I felt the skin on my neck tighten. "The rent's not due until the 1st. Cal, my rules changed. I need it now. $300. I don't get paid until Friday. I told you that. Not my problem." He took a step closer. The truckers looked down at their coffee. The couple in the booth went silent. "Maybe you got a new friend who can help you out." "Huh. Saw you talking to that guy in the sedan yesterday. He was asking for directions. Cal, please, this is my job." He smiled, a wet, ugly expression. "This job, you think this job's gonna save you." He reached out, not for my arm, but for my hand, the one holding the coffee pot. He grabbed my wrist. His fingers were thick and strong, digging into the bone. "I need my money, June." He twisted. Not hard, but with a sharp, practiced torque. Pain, white-hot and sickening, shot up my arm. I gasped, my knees buckling. The coffee pot swayed dangerously, hot liquid sloshing near the brim. I wouldn't drop it. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. I just stood there, shaking, my face pale beneath the bad makeup, and stared him in the eye. Let go. The doorbell chimed again. This time, it was a whisper. The man who entered didn't bring the storm in with him. He seemed to absorb the light in the room. He was in his mid-30s, wearing a suit so dark it looked like a cutout of the night. It fit him perfectly, a silent testament to money and power that Greywater rarely saw. His black hair was slicked back, his features sharp, severe. He was followed by a mountain of a man in a black overcoat who positioned himself by the door, his eyes scanning the room with a flat, professional emptiness. The man in the suit ignored Doyle. He slid onto a stool at the counter, placing his hands flat on the laminate. He looked at me, and his gaze was not like a look. It was like a physical touch, a cold blade tracing the line of my jaw, lingering on the caked-on concealer, then dropping to my white-knuckled hand, still trapped in Doyle's grip. Doyle, sensing a new audience, let go with a final, painful squeeze and stepped back, puffing himself up. "You need something, friend." The man in the suit didn't answer, and he just watched me. "Coffee," I managed to say, my voice trembling. I turned to get a mug, my wrist throbbing. Doyle snorted, gave me one last look of warning, and stomped back out into the rain. The door slammed behind him. I set the mug down, my hand shaking so badly the ceramic rattled. I poured the coffee. "Anything else?" He didn't look at the menu. His eyes, the color of dark, still water, were fixed on my face. Just the coffee. I turned to serve the truckers, trying to breathe, trying to push the pain down. That's when the guy at table 4, a loudmouth in a faded flannel, decided it was his turn. He'd been making comments all night. He wore his Kestrel Syndicate colors openly, a patch of a hawk on his sleeve. "Hey, sweetheart," he slurred as I passed. "Landlord giving you trouble, you could always come stay with me. I got plenty of room." He reached out and grabbed my waist, his fingers digging into my side. It was too much. The pain in my wrist, the humiliation from Doyle, and now this. I flinched, hard, twisting away from his grasp. The heavy oval tray I was carrying, loaded with empty plates and glasses, slipped from my grip. It hit the linoleum with a deafening crash. Glass shattered, scattering across the floor. Every sound in the diner stopped. The rain, the kitchen fan, the low hum of the cooler. All of it was swallowed by the sudden, ringing silence. The Kestrel guy laughed, a loud, barking sound. "Clumsy, ain't she?" At the counter, the man in the suit set his fork and knife down. He hadn't touched his food, but he placed them neatly on the plate. He spoke. His voice was quiet, a low rumble that carried no effort and filled the entire room. "Who did this?" He was looking at me. Nobody answered. The air grew thick, charged with a voltage I could feel on my skin. The Kestrel guy, still laughing, started to get out of his booth. "What's it to you? Suit you her new?" He raised a hand, dismissing the man. The man in the suit didn't move. He didn't stand. He didn't even look at the Kestrel guy. He just tilted his head, maybe a quarter of an inch, towards the mountain by the door. His bodyguard, Rook, moved. It wasn't a rush. It was an absence. He was at the door, and then he was at the booth. It took perhaps 2 seconds. One huge hand enveloped the Kestrel guy's throat from behind. The other arm came up under his chin. There was a sound like a boot pulling out of thick mud, a muffled choke. The Kestrel guy's eyes went wide with shock before they rolled back. Rook didn't hit him. He just held him, cutting off the air, and lowered the now limp body to the floor. It was clean. It was silent. It was terrifying. Rook straightened his coat, stepped over the man's legs, and went back to the door. I was staring, my mouth open. I'm fine," I stammered, the words hollow. "I'm okay." I bent down to pick up the larger shards of glass, but my hand was shaking uncontrollably. I couldn't make my fingers close beside my thumb, where the cuticle had split from the stress. A small, bright bead of blood welled up and dripped onto a piece of broken plate. The wind chimes by the door clattered suddenly, though no one had entered. Outside, through the rain-slicked glass, I saw Cal Doyle's rusted pickup truck, still idling across the street. A dark figure in a hoodie stepped from the alley's shadows, raised a phone, and took a picture of the diner's entrance. Then the figure was gone. The man at the counter finished his coffee. He motioned for the check. I wrote it out. My handwriting a spidery, shivering mess. He placed a stack of cash on the counter. Hundreds, enough to cover the check 10 times over, enough to pay Doyle. He stood, his presence making the small diner feel even smaller. He left a business card on the counter. It was heavy, black cardstock. There were no words, no numbers, just the embossed, stylized image of a raven, its wings spread. He looked at Sal, who was peeking from the kitchen. "Call her a car when her shift ends." It was a command. Then he and his bodyguard were gone, melting back into the rain as silently as they had arrived. I stared at the black card, my pulse hammering in my bruised wrist, across the street, on a high-utility pole. A small, black dome camera from the Greywater Municipal Safety Bureau slowly panned. It swiveled past the liquor store, past the pawn shop, and settled on the front window of the harbor and hearth. It focused, an automated, uncaring eye, landing directly on my face. It was an accidental, mechanical glance that had just changed my entire life. The cab Sal had called for me was a rattling yellow sedan that smelled like wet wool and old cigarettes. The driver kept looking at me in the rearview mirror, his eyes flicking from my bruised face to the black card I was still clutching. He dropped me at the curb of the Shoreline Flats, not even pulling into the cracked driveway, and sped off before I had both feet on the pavement. The lobby light was out again. I climbed the 3 flights of stairs, each step echoing in the damp, empty stairwell. My apartment was number 305. I put my key in the lock. It didn't turn. I jiggled it, my bruised wrist sending a jolt of fire up my arm. The key was stuck fast. I leaned closer, squinting in the dim hallway light. The metal around the keyhole was scratched, fresh, bright marks against the tarnished brass. Someone had been here. Someone had tried to get in. I slammed my good shoulder against the door, rattling the frame, and the cheap tumbler finally gave way. The door swung open into the dark. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Wet mud and something else, something metallic. The second thing I saw was the boot print on my linoleum floor. It was huge, a deep treaded work boot still glistening with rain and grime. Leading from the window I always kept locked. My heart stopped. Someone hadn't tried to get in. They had been in. I backed against the wall, my hand fumbling for the light switch. The single bulb overhead flickered on, illuminating my tiny, violated space. The cheap particle board drawers of my dresser were pulled open. My mattress was askew. They hadn't taken my small stash of tip money from the ceramic jar, or the small television. They had been looking for something. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket, a sound so loud in the silence it made me cry out. I fumbled for it, my fingers numb. An unknown number. A single line of text. "Don't go to the ferry tomorrow night." I stared at it. I had no plans to go to the ferry. I hadn't been to the ferry in 6 months. It wasn't a warning. It was a message. It meant they knew things I didn't. It meant they were watching. I sank onto the edge of my upturned mattress, my breath coming in short, tight gasps. I was a fly in a web, and I hadn't even seen the spider. I booted up the ancient laptop I used for my online community college classes. The screen was blue and grainy, but the Wi-Fi connected. One new email in my inbox, not from the college. The sender was FSKit.gov. The subject line, "Request for assistance, Greywater Port investigation." My blood went cold. "Miss Maddox, your name has come to our attention as a person of interest who may be able to assist in an ongoing federal investigation concerning racketeering and protection schemes at the Greywater Port. We request your voluntary cooperation. Please contact Special Agent Mara Keene at the number below to schedule an interview. Voluntary." The words sat there like a threat. The Kestrel guy at the diner, the man in the suit, the black card, and now the federal government. A violent banging on my door made the whole frame shake. "Maddox, I know you're in there. Open this door, Doyle." I froze, my heart leaping into my throat. "I saw you come in," he roared, his voice muffled but furious. He pounded again, a heavy, fleshy fist against the wood. "You think you're smart. You think your new friend is going to protect you. You keep playing games, and the rent's not just going up, it's doubling. You hear me? And I'll be collecting it every night in person. You better start being nice. June, real nice." The thinly veiled threat hung in the air, slimy and thick, shaking. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. "Greywater Emergency Services. Please hold." The tinny music started, then stopped. "All circuits are busy. Please hold." I waited, listening to Doyle's heavy breathing outside my door. Finally, he cursed, a string of filthy words, and I heard his heavy footsteps stomp away down the hall. The 911 call just disconnected. A busy signal. I had never felt so completely, utterly alone. I was still sitting there, shaking. An hour later when the knock came, it wasn't Doyle. It was a polite, measured rap, just 3 taps. I didn't move. The knock came again. I crept to the peephole. Rook, the mountain from the diner. He was standing there, his expression as flat and unreadable as it had been before. He was holding a plain brown paper bag. He wasn't trying the handle. He wasn't threatening. He was just waiting. I opened the door a crack, the chain still on. He didn't speak. He held out the bag. I looked at him, then at the bag. My wrist throbbed, a deep, agonizing ache. I hadn't been able to fill the kettle for tea, let alone lift it. My hand was swollen, blue and purple from my knuckles to my forearm. Slowly, I unhooked the chain. I took the bag. It was heavy. Inside, there was a tube of expensive-looking antiseptic ointment, a professional-grade medical brace for my wrist, and a long, black raincoat. The material so fine it felt like silk. It was worlds away from my thin nylon jacket. I looked up to thank him, but he was already gone. Halfway down the hall, his footsteps silent, I braced my wrist. The relief was immediate and sharp. I put on the raincoat, the lining warm against my skin. It felt like armor. I turned on the small television for the noise. The local news was on. A reporter stood in the rain, lights flashing behind her. Fire crews are still working to contain the blaze at Crescent Pier. She was saying, the warehouse, which officials say was completely engulfed in minutes, is registered to a holding company. Corax Logistics. Arson is strongly suspected. Corax, the Raven, Paolo Gattuso's company. The Kestrels had hit him, and they had hit him hard. This wasn't a random fight, it was a war, and I was, somehow, standing in the middle of it. I went to my landing, locking the 3 bolts on my door. I leaned against the frame, breathing in the hallway's musty air, and I smelled it. Faint, sharp, and chemical. Gasoline. It wasn't strong, but it was there, clinging to the grimy carpet on the landing, right outside my door. A memory, sudden and blinding, hit me. I was 6 years old, sitting on a duffel bag at a bus station. The smell of diesel and gasoline, my mother pressing a $20 bill into my hand. I'll be right back. Junebug, don't move. She never came back. The smell of fuel was the smell of being abandoned, of being left to burn. That was it. I was done. I wasn't waiting for Doyle, or the feds, or the Kestrels. I wasn't going to be a pawn, and I wasn't going to be a victim. I went back inside. I grabbed my backpack and started throwing my few clothes into it, my toothbrush, the laptop, the cash from the jar. I zipped the bag and swung it over my good shoulder. I walked to the door, my hand on the deadbolt. I looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty, but at the bottom of my door, in the crack of light, was a shadow, a pair of boots, standing perfectly still. Someone was out there, waiting. My entire body went rigid. They knew I was leaving. The landline on my wall unit, the one I never used, rang. The sound was a shrill, plastic scream in the small room. I stared at it. It rang again. My hand, the one in the new brace, picked it up. Hello? Don't open the door. The voice was low, calm, and absolute. Paolo Gattuso. I'm downstairs. I looked at the peephole. The shadow outside my door was gone, vanished, as if it had never been there. A minute later, my phone buzzed. It was him. Come down. Rook was waiting by the stairwell. He didn't speak, just nodded and led the way down. He opened the back door of a black sedan, a car so clean and dark it looked like a hole in the rainy night. Paolo was in the back seat, looking out the window. I slid in, the leather seat cold, the door closed with a heavy, final thunk. Rook got in the driver's seat, and the car pulled away from the curb, its engine a low, powerful hum. We drove in silence for a block. Then, as we passed the alley across from my building, Paolo nodded his head slightly. Look. I looked. Cal Doyle was there, huddled under a broken awning out of the worst of the rain. He was talking to a man in a dark hoodie and a baseball cap. As the sedan's headlights swept past, the man looked up. The cap was embroidered with a single, stylized hawk, a kestrel. Doyle was laughing, his hand out. The kestrel man passed him a thick white envelope. My landlord, my apartment, the break-in. It was all connected. Paolo turned to look at me. The streetlights passed over his face, all sharp angles and shadows. He wasn't looking at me with pity. Pity was for victims. He was looking at me with an unnerving, assessing calm. He reached into the front, grabbed a warm, damp towel from a heater unit, and handed it to me. Not for my face, but for my hands. That hand needs to rest, he said, his voice quiet. I'll handle the rest. The sedan cut through the harbor district, a silent black shark in a sea of rain. The sodium vapor lights of the port bled through the wet windshield, coating the world in a sick, honey-colored glow. The wipers kept a steady, hypnotic rhythm, but they couldn't scrub away the grime of the city. Paolo Gattuso sat on his side of the car. I sat on mine. The space between us was a physical thing, a yard of expensive black leather that felt as wide as the Greywater River. He had not asked a single question. He just stared out his window, watching the skeletons of the cargo cranes pass by. The silence was his, and he wore it as comfortably as his dark suit. It was my silence that was jagged, filled with the echo of Doyle's threats and the scrape of a boot on my floor. I had to break it, or it would break me. "I work 2 jobs," I said to his reflection in the glass. "The diner, and I stock shelves at the all-night market on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'm trying to pay off tuition debt from a community college course I dropped." His reflection didn't move, but I knew he was listening. "My mom, she left a long time ago." I stopped. That was enough. The rest of it, the foster homes, the constant running, the feeling of being disposable that was mine. I wouldn't show him those wounds. His reflection gave a single, slow nod. He didn't offer sympathy. He didn't say, "I'm sorry to hear that." He just accepted the information as currency, a small payment for the ride. He didn't pry for more. The car turned away from the water, heading inland toward a block of old brick warehouses that had been walled off from the rest of the city. We passed through a heavy iron gate that Rook opened with a remote. This was Raven House. It wasn't a gaudy mansion, it was a fortress, a complex of 19th century industrial buildings, all red-black brick and dark steel, repurposed into a seamless, modern headquarters. It was tasteful, terrifying, and absolutely silent. Rook parked in a subterranean garage that smelled of concrete and expensive cars. Paolo led me not into a grand hall, but to a simple elevator. We rode up 2 floors and walked down a hall that felt more like a high-end law firm than a mob den. He opened a door to what looked like a private clinic. A man in a white coat, older, with kind eyes and a tired face, stood up from a desk. "This is Dr. Sabin," Paolo said. "Paolo. He'll look at your wrist." The doctor was gentle. His hands were professional and warm as he examined the swelling. "This is a severe sprain, Miss Maddox, with some hairline fracturing in the carpal bones, Cal Doyle's signature. He always was a clumsy animal." He didn't ask how it happened. He already knew. He fitted me with a new, more rigid brace. "You must rest this completely. No trays, no stocking shelves, not for at least 3 days, or you'll have permanent damage." 3 days. That was half a week's pay. That was Doyle's rent. I must have looked panicked, because the doctor put a hand on my good arm. "He's right, June. Rest." Paolo thanked him, and we were back in the hall. My backpack was still on my shoulder. "Thank you for the doctor," I said, my voice hoarse. "I can take a bus from here." "A bus to where?" "The apartment that's been compromised, the city where Cal Doyle is waiting for you. That's my problem to solve." "It's not," he said, his voice flat. He pulled a key from his pocket. It wasn't a normal key. It was a heavy, old-fashioned brass key. "This is for the Stone Pier guest house. It's on the property. It has its own entrance." He held it out. "My promise is simple. You will be safe there. No one will find you, and no one," he paused, his dark eyes locking onto mine, "will touch you when you do not want them to." The words hung in the air. He wasn't offering protection in exchange for something. He was offering sanctuary, a gray, complicated, dangerous sanctuary. My hand, the good one, was shaking as I took the key. The guest house was a small, 2-story brick building separate from the main complex, overlooking a dark, churning inlet of the river. It was immaculate, impersonal, and safer than any place I had ever slept. Rook delivered a file to Paolo an hour later. I was standing in the small kitchen, trying to open a bottle of water with one hand, when Paolo spread the contents on the dining table. They were photographs. Glossy, high resolution, Cal Doyle under the awning, the kestrel man in the hawk-embroidered cap, the exchange of the envelope, Arlen Pike, Paolo said, tapping the photo of the Kestrel. They're second in command, a real piece of work. Doyle's been taking Kestrel money to put pressure on businesses on my side of the water. The Harbor and Hearth is one of them. He used you to make a point. So the break-in was Pike's men looking for whatever leverage Doyle could get on you to make you cooperate with them instead, or to scare you off so he could put one of his own girls in the diner. He closed the file. The case was closed. Simple, brutal, and impersonal. I was just a pawn on a board I didn't even know I was playing on. Later, the silence of the house was broken by a new sound. It was music, a piano. I followed it to the main room. A small balcony overlooked a larger, two-story library in the main building, connected by a covered walkway. Down there, in the cone of a single green-shaded lamp, was Paolo. When he was playing, the piece wasn't soft or romantic. It was short, precise, almost mathematical. Each note was struck with a clean, controlled force. It was like listening to a man practice self-discipline, like he was recalibrating his own mind before making a difficult, perhaps violent, decision. He stopped, mid-chord, and the silence that rushed back in was absolute. He knew I was watching. A few minutes later, he appeared at the guest house door. "You should eat." He'd brought a tray, simple pasta, a thick slice of garlic bread, a glass of water. He set it on the table. I sat, my stomach in knots. I picked up the fork with my left hand, my fingers clumsy. I felt stupid, inept. A small, bitter laugh escaped me. "I can't even eat." Paolo sat across from me, not touching any food himself. "Eat," he said, his voice softer than I'd heard it. "You're safe here." It wasn't a suggestion. It was a statement of fact. And in that moment, I believed him. I ate, my left hand awkward, my bruised wrist throbbing on the table beside me. After, I stepped out onto the small balcony. The rain had stopped, but the air was cold and damp, smelling of the river and wet stone. I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding since Cal Doyle first grabbed my wrist, a long, shuddering sigh. I heard him step out behind me. I tensed. He didn't come near me. Instead, he took a heavy wool throw from a chair and draped it over my shoulders. He was careful, his knuckles brushing the collar of my shirt, but not my skin. It was a gesture of profound, calculated distance. He stood beside me, not touching, just looking out at the black water. His gaze was distant, but for the first time, it felt warm. My phone, which I'd set on the balcony rail, lit up. The screen glowed, bright against the night, a new text from the same unknown number. "The ferry is still there, 0217, 2:17 in the morning. A trap, a lure." Or, as I stared at it, maybe it was a door, a way out of this. Paolo looked at the phone, then at my face. He didn't ask what it said. He just waited. I turned the screen so he could see it. He read it, his expression unreadable. He looked at the water, then back at me. He wasn't going to make the decision for me. He wasn't going to lock me in this guest house for my own good. "Do you want me with you?" he asked, his voice a low rumble in the dark. "Or do you want to go alone?" The choice was mine. I stared at the glowing screen. 2:17 a.m. It was a clear trap, meant to look like an inside tip, a chance for me to see something I shouldn't. "I'm going," I said. Paolo was leaning against the balcony rail, a dark silhouette against the black water. "You go. You'll be walking into a kestrel net. They are not subtle." "If I don't go, they'll just try something else," I argued, my voice tight. "At the diner, at the market, at least this way. I see them coming. I choose the place. I choose the time." This message came to my phone. "It's about me." He saw the stubborn set of my jaw. "Then I'm coming with you." "No, you said it. They're looking for you. That fire at Korax. This is about you and them. I'm just the piece of lint they're using to sweep the floor." "They hurt you to get to me," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "That makes it my business." "I'll go," I said, my good hand balling into a fist. "But I decide. I keep the phone. I say if we engage. I say when we leave. We just watch. We see who set the trap. We watch, and we don't intervene unless I say so. Paolo held my gaze for a long, heavy moment. He was weighing the risk against my insistence, a visible calculation of control. Finally, he gave a single, sharp nod. We watch. We do not engage. Rook will shadow the perimeter. The lower ferry terminal was a graveyard after midnight. It was 2:10 in the morning. The main building was a long, low structure of peeling white paint and rusted beams, the air thick with the smell of diesel fumes and dead fish. The last ferry to the islands wouldn't leave for another 4 hours. We weren't in Paolo's black sedan. Rook drove a nondescript utility truck, the kind that might belong to a port electrician, and parked it in the deep shadows of an overflowing container yard, a good 100 yards from the terminal itself. Paolo and I were on foot. We moved between the towering stacks of shipping containers, the metal walls blocking the wind and creating a maze of dark alleys. He moved with a liquid, predatory grace, his feet making no sound on the wet pavement. I felt clumsy and loud beside him, my new raincoat swishing, my braced wrist aching with every step. "There," he whispered, his breath a small cloud of steam. He pointed, and we stopped at the edge of a container stack, giving us a clear view of the loading dock. I saw them, 2 figures, standing near the fog-shrouded waterline, just outside the weak circle of a security lamp. One was Arlen Pike, the Kestrel man from the photograph. He had his hawk-emblazoned cap pulled low and was pacing nervously. The other figure was a woman. She was tall, slim, dressed in a dark, severe pantsuit, her hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her back was to us. Arlen Pike was agitated, gesturing wildly with his hands. The woman was calm, unmoving, like a statue. We watched as Pike handed her a thick manila envelope. She took it, and in return handed him a smaller, white envelope. She turned slightly, her sharp profile catching the sickly yellow light. My blood froze. I knew that face. That's Agent Keene," I whispered, my throat tightening. "Mara Keene, from the FSCU, the one who emailed me." Paolo's head turned slowly, his eyes cold and dark, bored into me. "The feds." "They're talking," I whispered. I fumbled for my phone with my good hand. I raised it, my arm shaking, and zoomed in. The digital sensor struggled in the low light, the image grainy, but it was clear enough. Pike, Keene, the exchange. Pike's voice carried on the damp air, sharp with anger. "Don't care what you promised. This is getting out of hand. We need that manifest, the real port manifest 7C. Keene's reply was too low to hear, but her posture was rigid. I tapped the screen, taking a photo. Tap, tap, tap. A pinprick of red light appeared on the container, 6 inches from my head. I didn't even understand what it was. It looked like a red bug. It crawled across the corrugated metal, fast and precise. It wasn't targeting me. It swept past my shoulder, crossed the empty space between us, and settled directly on the center of Paolo's chest. "Down!" His voice was a roar. He didn't push me. He grabbed the front of my raincoat in one fist and threw himself backward, using his weight to pull me with him. We slammed into the mud and gravel behind the container stack. The sound came a split second later. Thwack, puffed! A high-velocity round punched through the exact spot Paolo had been standing. A moment after that, a distant crack echoed across the water, the sound of the rifle shot finally catching up. Thwack, thwack! Bullets tore into the wooden pilings by the water. Water splashed violently. Pike and Keene scattered, diving behind a concrete barrier. "Sniper," Paolo breathed, his body shielding mine, his voice tight with adrenaline. "Kestrel, they weren't here for you. They used your phone to track me." The realization hit me like a physical blow. I was bait. I was the goat tied to a post. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it would break my ribs. I was terrified, my lungs burning, but my hand was still clamped around my phone. I hadn't dropped it. "Rook, we are compromised. Second-level sniper, East Quadrant." Paolo spoke into a small radio on his lapel. Rook's voice came back, calm as ice. "On it, I'm at the container." "What container?" I hissed. "The one they're protecting," Paolo said, his eyes scanning the gantries above us. Container 64B, the one the sniper is using for a landmark, the one Pike and Keene were meeting under. We heard a sharp crang and the sound of heavy metal snapping. Rook wasn't being subtle. He had used bolt cutters on a heavy-duty lock. The metal door of a container screeched open. "Boss," Rook's voice came over the radio. "You need to see this." A loud, bellowing horn blast split the night. The ferry. It was early. Its deck lights flashed on, flooding the terminal in harsh white light. "Kestrels," Paolo said. 2 black vans, their headlights off, sped into the terminal, cutting off the main exit. Men poured out, carrying automatic weapons. They were fanning out, surrounding the area. Then, from the main road, came a different sound. Sirens, not police sirens, a different, pulsing wail. 2 armored trucks and 3 cruisers, all marked Spatu Port Authority. Tactical units screamed into the terminal, their blue and white lights strobing in the fog. They arrived too fast, far too perfectly timed. "It's a setup," Paolo said, his voice flat. "Keene's call." The Kestrel team and the Spatu officers started shouting. It wasn't a firefight, it was a tense, armed standoff. Mara Keene stepped out from behind the concrete barrier, her badge now clipped to her belt. "FSCU, stand down," she commanded. "This is a federal operation." She looked right at the container stack where we were hiding. Her eyes scanned over me as if I was a piece of trash, then flicked back. Just for a second, it was a warning. A clear, cold, silent message. "Be careful who you are with." "We're leaving now," Paolo said. He was on his feet, pulling me up. We stayed low, in the deep-cut shadows of the containers, circling back toward the utility truck. Rook was already there, the truck's engine humming. He had a small, portable thermal printer in his hand, which he tossed into the cab. From the container, they're printing fake customs receipts, found branding for a shell corp. Starglow Citrus Imports. We piled in, me in the middle. Paolo didn't even look back. Rook pulled out of the yard without lights, taking a service road that ran parallel to the main exit. We passed the whole chaotic mess, a tableau of flashing lights, shouting men, and federal agents. My mind was reeling. The feds were working with the Kestrels, or Keene was, and they had used me, my phone, to get Paolo in the open. I had been so stupid. We were halfway back to Raven House when I finally found my voice. "Stop!" Rook looked at Paolo in the rearview mirror. Paolo looked at me. "Stop the truck," I said again, my voice stronger. "Take me to the diner." "June, that is not a good idea," Paolo said, his tone flat. "I need to talk to Doyle." "Doyle is irrelevant. He's a pawn. He's my problem. He's the one who started this. He's the one who took Kestrel money to hurt me. I'm not running. I'm not hiding in your guest house while you handle the rest. I need to see his face. I need to talk to him, myself." Paolo studied me. He was looking for the fear, the shaking. It was still there, but now it was mixed with a cold, hard rage. "I will go with you," he said. "No, this is my fight. You're right. Your presence, it makes things complicated. It's a war. This is just a sleazy landlord. Let me handle my own business." "I will go with you," he repeated, his tone final. "But I will stand outside." Rook turned the truck around. As we drove, the silence was heavy. I opened my phone, my fingers swiping through the blurry photos. Pike, Keene, the envelope, the water, then I saw it. One of the shots I took when Pike was gesturing, his neck exposed to the light. It was grainy, but unmistakable, a tattoo, just below his ear, on his neck. It was 3 numbers, in a simple black font, 711, 7C, I said aloud. He said, "Port Manifest 7C. Paolo looked at the phone. "Arlen Pike," I said, showing him the picture. "He has a tattoo. 711. Paolo's eyes narrowed. "Bay 711. It's an old, decommissioned Kestrel warehouse. We thought it was abandoned." He wasn't talking about a document, I said, the pieces clicking together, the adrenaline making my mind sharp. He was talking about a place. We pulled up across the street from the harbor and hearth. The neon sign was off. The diner was dark, save for a single light in the back office, where Sal would be counting the till. "Wait here," I said. I got out of the truck, my good hand shoved in the pocket of my new raincoat, and walked toward the light. The harbor and hearth was silent when I pushed open the door. The only light was the weak fluorescent square spilling from the back office, cutting across the dirty linoleum floor. The air was cold, thick with the smell of stale coffee and old grease. Cal Doyle was at the metal desk, his huge back to me, scribbling in a ledger. Oh, he didn't hear me approach. "I'm not here about the rent," I said. He jumped, spinning in his chair, his face a mask of surprise that quickly curdled into a sneer. "Maddox, you've got a hell of a nerve coming back here. You're taking security maintenance fees from Sal," I said, staying in the doorway. "But it's not for security. It's for the Kestrels. It's for Arlen Pike." Doyle's face darkened. He stood, his bulk filling the small office. "You're playing with fire, girl. You don't know the first thing about how this city works. I know you took their money." I pressed, my voice shaking but holding. "I know you let them into my apartment. I know you broke my wrist." "You're damn right I did," he snarled, taking a step toward me. "And you know what? Without the Kestrels, this place would be a smoking hole in the ground. I'm protecting it. And you're just a little bug I can squash any time I want." He lunged, grabbing for my good arm. The front bell of the diner chimed, a bright, clear sound in the tense quiet. Paolo Gattuso was there. He hadn't waited in the truck. He stood just inside the main door, a shadow against the rain-streaked glass. He didn't look angry. He looked bored. He walked past Doyle, ignoring him completely, and stopped at the main counter. He placed a single, folded document on the clean laminate. "That's for you, Mr. Doyle," Paolo said, his voice quiet, conversational. Doyle, his hand still clamped on my arm, looked at him. "What is it?" "It's a bill of sale for the Shoreline Flats. I bought your debt from the bank this afternoon. You're foreclosed." Doyle's face went white, and he let go of my arm. "That paper," Paolo continued, tapping it with one finger, "is a severance agreement. It nullifies all outstanding tenant debts, specifically Miss Maddox's. It also states that if you ever come within 500 feet of her or this diner again, you will be in breach, and the full, accelerated weight of your consolidated debt will be transferred to a collections agency in Chicago. They are not as polite as I am. Sign it, and you're free to walk away from Greywater with what's in your pockets. Get out of her life." It was the cleanest assassination I had ever seen. No blood, just ink. Doyle stared at the paper, his mind working, his breath coming in wheezy gasps. Then a slow, ugly smile spread across his face. It was a terrifying, triumphant look. "You think you've won," he giggled, a wet, horrible sound. He reached under his desk and pulled out a small, black USB flash drive. He held it up. "You're smart. Gattuso. But I'm smarter. I've got cameras. Everywhere, in the hallways, in the diner, pointed at the booths." His eyes locked on me. "It's amazing what you can see. A lonely waitress, a friendly customer, a hand on a leg, a quick kiss in the hallway when she thinks no one's looking." My stomach dropped. That's a lie." "It's not a lie," he roared. "It's just good editing. I've got a beautiful little video, maybe 4 minutes long, of little June here, being very friendly with half a dozen customers. It looks terrible. I wonder what the state liquor board would do if they saw the diner's staff fraternizing. Or maybe I just send it to your new boyfriend." I couldn't breathe. My face was pale, my hands numb. Paolo didn't even look at me. He just sighed, a sound of profound disappointment. "A doctored video. That's your trump card." He shook his head. "My digital forensics guy loves these games. He's listening to this conversation right now. He'll take your hard drive, pull the original time-stamped footage, identify the non-linear edits, and have this entire building shut down for illegal surveillance in protected areas before you can even find a USB port. You're bluffing," Doyle spat. "I don't bluff," Paolo said. The diner door crashed open. "Essart, hands in the air now!" 4 people in heavy tactical vests stormed in. Weapons raised. They weren't the port cops. Their vests were marked Essart, Eastern Seaboard, Anti-Racketeering Task Force. They swarmed the office, ignoring Paolo and me, grabbing Cal Doyle and slamming him face first against the wall. Calvan Doyle. "You're being detained for investigation into a multi-state racketeering operation," Doyle was screaming, his face mashed against a health code certificate. And then a fifth person stepped through the door. Mara Keene. She was wearing the same ESART vest, her hair pulled back, her face cold and impassive. She saw me. Her eyes flickered to Paolo, a tiny, almost imperceptible tightening of her jaw. "Agent Keene," Paolo said, his voice smooth as silk. "This seems a long way from the FSCU's jurisdiction." A taller woman with sharp gray hair stepped forward, her eyes missing nothing. "I'm Inspector Leora Penn. Essert," she said. "Agent Keene is acting as a special liaison for this operation. Her unit flagged suspicious financial activity originating from this address." A liaison, a federal agent working with Essert who'd been meeting with the Kestrels at the ferry. The web wasn't just tangled, it was choking. "You've got the wrong man," Doyle shrieked, his voice cracking in pure panic. He was cuffed, his face red. "He's the one, he's Gattuso. Ask him about the pier, ask him about the Kestrels, ask him about Bay 711. The room went dead silent. Inspector Penn turned her head slowly, her gaze landing on Paolo. "Bay 711, Mara Keene stepped forward, her voice sharp. "It's a known Kestrel dump site. Inspector, he's just deflecting, grasping at straws." Penn stared at Doyle. "We'll be sure to ask you all about it. Mr. Doyle, get him out of here." They dragged him out, still protesting. Mara Keene held my gaze for one long, cold second. It was a warning, a threat, and a dismissal all in one. Then she was gone. The diner door closed, the sirens faded, we were alone again, the only sound the hum of the soda cooler. "So," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "she's working with them all." "She's working for herself," Paolo corrected. He picked up the contract from the counter and tore it in half. "Doyle is irrelevant now." He turned to me. The adrenaline was gone, leaving me shaking. "This is your chance. June, the stop button I told you about. I can have you on a flight out of Logan in 2 hours. A new name, a new life. Doyle is gone. You're free. You can walk away from this, right now, and never look back." I looked at the door they had dragged Doyle through. I thought of Keene's cold, calculating eyes. I thought of the shadow outside my apartment. I thought of the text message. They had used me. They all thought I was a pawn, a piece to be moved or sacrificed. "You told me you'd been running your whole life," he said softly. "I'm done running," I said, my voice coming back, hard and clear. "He threatened to ruin me. She's using all of them. They don't get to win. I want to see this through, to the end." He watched me, a long, assessing look, a tiny flicker of something. Approval, respect, to the end, he agreed. "But we need rules, between us." I nodded. "What rules?" "First, no lies, not to each other, they're all lying. We won't. The truth is the only thing we'll have." "Okay," I breathed. "Second, the line, what I said at the guest house, it holds. I will not touch you unless you ask me to. And you, I won't touch you unless you ask me to." I finished, the words feeling heavy. "Third," and he looked at me, his gaze intense. "This is your choice. That means you control the danger. If it's too much, you say the word and we're gone. The plane will be waiting." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a heavy, steel cigarette lighter. It was old, worn smooth at the edges. Engraved on the side was the raven. He pressed it into my good hand. The metal was warm. "If you're in danger," he said, "if you need me, or if you're ready to stop, click it 3 times. Rook will have a monitor on this frequency. I will hear it. I don't care where I am or what I am doing. I will come." I closed my fist around it. 3 clicks. 3 clicks. I took a deep breath. I walked behind the counter to the small, cracked mirror by the coffee station. I looked at my reflection, the girl with the cheap concealer hiding a purple-black bruise. I turned on the sink tap, splashed cold water on my face, and grabbed a rough paper towel. I scrubbed until the caked-on makeup was gone, until my skin was raw, until the bruise was fully visible, stark, ugly, and real. I wasn't hiding it anymore. I turned back to Paolo, the Raven lighter a heavy, solid weight in my pocket. Doyle confirmed it. Bay 711. That's where we go next. Bay 711 was not a warehouse. It was a canyon of rust and steel, a graveyard of shipping containers stacked 6 high under a leaky tin roof. The wind howled through the gaps, carrying the smell of cold metal, salt rot, and something acrid, like old chemicals. The plan was desperate, built on a single, grainy photograph. I was the Trojan horse. Rook had provided a fake ID, a clipboard with a forged manifest, and a high-visibility vest that smelled like mildew. "You're a manifest checker for a third-party logistics auditor," he'd explained, his voice flat. "You're new. You're supposed to be there. Walk in. Act lost. Keep your head down. We'll be on the perimeter. You have 5 minutes to get what we need." Paolo had said nothing, but his eyes, dark and intense, had been on me the entire drive. He'd handed me a small, discreet earpiece. "One way, I can hear you. You can't hear me. Talk normally if you have to. We'll know." I walked past the gate, my heart a cold, hammering drum against my ribs. The guard was a Kestrel thug, but my name was on his list. He just grunted and waved me in. The place was a maze. I moved down an aisle between 2 towering walls of blue containers, my boots crunching on the gravel. I could hear men shouting somewhere to my left, the beeping of a forklift. I pulled out my phone, clicked record on the audio app, and let it hang by its strap from my braced wrist, the lens facing out. I found the field office, a prefabricated trailer dropped in the middle of the concrete expanse. The lights were on. I could hear voices inside. I didn't go in. I stopped, pretending to check my manifest against a container number, my back to the trailer, my phone angled toward the thin wall. Arlen Pike's voice, loud, angry. "I don't care about the deal your federal friends are sniffing around. That fire at Korax was sloppy. You're bringing too much heat." And the other voice, a woman's, cold, sharp, and chillingly familiar. Mara Keene. "The heat is the point. Arlen, Isard is busy with Doyle. The local cops are chasing their tails. It gives us a clean territory. My evidence puts Gattuso away for good. Your boss gets the entire port, from the pier to the sound. All you have to do is deliver the manifest." "It's not a manifest," Pike snapped. "It's a goddamn ledger, and it's not here. It's..." A klaxon horn, deafeningly loud, split the air. Wow, wow, wow! Red lights began to flash, sweeping across the yard, turning the rain-slicked pavement to blood. The trailer door burst open. "Who the hell are you?" Pike roared. He was holding my fake ID. The guard must have radioed him. "The auditors aren't due until next week, Caesar." I didn't think. I just ran. I sprinted into the maze, my boots sliding on the wet ground. Shouts erupted behind me. "There, don't shoot her. Pike wants her." I ducked left, then right, into a narrow gap between containers. Dead end, I doubled back, my lungs on fire. The klaxon was a physical assault, a screaming pulse in my head. I heard them, their heavy boots gaining on me. I turned a sharp corner. My foot slipped on a patch of oil-slicked mud, and I went down. My good arm scraped against the raw, rusted steel of a container, tearing my sleeve and the skin beneath it, a hot, sharp pain. I was trying to scramble up, my braced wrist useless, when a hand shot out of the shadows. It wasn't a grab. It was an iron grip. Paolo. He'd been inside the perimeter all along. He hauled me to my feet and pulled me back, deep into a gap between 2 containers that was barely wider than our bodies. It was pitch black. A sliver of an alley. He pressed me against the cold steel wall, his body shielding the entrance. We were chest to chest, his form hard and warm against mine. I could feel the thud of his heart, or maybe it was my own. The air was electric. "They're coming!" I gasped, my voice choked with panic. "Be quiet!" He breathed. His breath fanned my cheek. We stood there, pinned in the dark, the cold, corrugated steel pressing into my back. His hand was still on my arm, his other hand flat against the wall by my head, caging me in. I could smell the faint, clean scent of his wool coat, mixed with the metallic tang of the harbor. The shouts were closer now. "Spread out, Finder!" My entire body was shaking. The scrape on my arm burned. The klaxon wailed. I looked up at him, my eyes wide in the sliver of reflected red light. He was staring down at me, his expression unreadable. His eyes black pits, the adrenaline, the fear, the proximity, it all coalesced into a single, unbearable point of pressure. His gaze dropped to my mouth. He didn't move. He was holding himself perfectly still. He leaned in, his forehead just an inch from mine. "Is this okay?" he whispered, his voice a low vibration against my skin. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. That was all he needed. He closed the distance. His mouth was not gentle. It was acclaiming. It was firm and hot and desperate. A raw, silent answer to the chaos around us. It was not a kiss of romance. It was a kiss of defiance. We are here. We are alive. I grabbed the lapel of his coat with my good hand, my knuckles white, and kissed him back with all the fear and rage I had. His other hand moved from the wall to the back of my neck, his fingers tangling in my hair, holding me steady, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw. His lips were a paradox, soft and demanding. We weren't hiding. We were anchoring. A burst of static and a voice, jarringly close. Checking the north line. Nothing. Paolo broke the kiss, his breathing harsh, but he didn't move away. He rested his forehead against mine. We stayed like that for a beat. 2, our breath mingling, a silent, binding contract. I am here with you. Then he pulled back. Rook is making a diversion. Get to the office, now. As if on cue, a crash of metal echoed from the far side of the yard, followed by shouts. Rook had just toppled a stack of empty oil drums. The kestrels took the bait, their footsteps pounding away from us. Go, Paolo ordered. He pushed me toward the office. Download the manifest. I ran, my legs shaky, my lips still burning. The trailer was empty. Pike's computer unlocked. I jammed a USB stick from Rook into the port, copying. A glint of light from a high gantry crane. 300 yards away. A second sniper. I saw the red dot appear on the trailer window, right where my head was. I ducked, a deafening crack smash. Glass exploded, showering the desk. The bullet tore through the chair where I had been. Paolo, when he was out in the open on top of a container, holding a heavy storm lantern. He'd used the reflected beam to blind the sniper, to draw the shot. He was exposed. My hand flew to my pocket, the Raven lighter. Click, 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 the signal. Get out now. The download finished, complete. I ripped the USB out. Paolo was already at the trailer door, grabbing my hand. Rook is at the east gate. Refrigerated truck. Move. We ran. No cover. Just a blind sprint across the open pavement. The alarm still screaming. Another shot rang out, chipping the concrete at our feet. We reached the gate. A white, unmarked refrigerated truck idled, its engine a low thrum. Rook threw open the back doors. Paolo shoved me in, and I tumbled onto the cold, metal-grated floor. He was in right behind me. Rook slammed the doors, plunging us into absolute, freezing darkness. The truck lurched, tires spinning on gravel, and then we were moving. Fast. I was in the dark, my arms stinging, my body shaking with cold and adrenaline. I couldn't stop. The events replayed in my head, the chase, the wall, his mouth. Paolo sat across from me, his presence a dark, quiet weight. I couldn't see him, but I could feel his gaze. He didn't say, "Are you okay?" He didn't say anything. He just shifted, his boots scraping the metal floor. I felt his hand, a solid, warm presence, land on the grate beside my own. He didn't grab my hand. He didn't touch me. He just offered. His fingers lay there, an inch from mine, a silent question in the freezing dark. My good hand, still shaking, trembling with the aftershock, moved. I slid my fingers over his. He didn't grab. He just closed his hand around mine, a firm, warm, solid grip, and my shaking finally began to stop. The refrigerated truck dropped us in the echoing silence of the Raven House garage. My hand was still in Paolo's. We let go the instant the interior light came on. 2 guilty teenagers, the warmth vanishing into the cold. My scraped arm was stinging, and the front of my shirt was damp with melted frost from the floor. We didn't go to the guest house. We went to what Paolo called the study, a room that was more like a command center. It was paneled in dark wood, but one wall was a bank of monitors. Rook was already there, the USB stick from my pocket now plugged into a server rack. "She got it," Rook said, his voice holding the barest trace of approval. He tapped a keyboard. It's not a manifest, it's a full ledger, encrypted. But the key was in a text file labeled admin. "Amateurs," Paolo said, pouring a brandy. He didn't offer me one. He handed me a bottle of water and a first aid kit. "Here's our Star Glow citrus imports." Rook said. A spreadsheet filled a monitor, shipments of agricultural goods from South America. But the payment schedules, they're not for oranges. He highlighted a column. Millions all routed through a shell company. North Current Foundation. I read aloud, recognizing the name. "The foundation is a cutout," Rook said, "but the authorization codes for the transfers are consistent. It's a digital signature, always the same." He brought up another file. "MK Ladis." I looked at Paolo. "Marroquin," I said. "MK." Paolo took a slow sip of his brandy. A federal agent running a black money ledger for my main rival. "She's not just running it," I said, my mind racing as I connected the dots. "She's building it. The fire at Corax, the setup at the ferry, framing Doyle. She's using Isard and the Kestrels to wipe out your operations so she and Pike can take the whole port, a clean territory. She called it, she's ambitious," Paolo said, his voice cold. "I'll give her that." "We have to release this," I said, my good hand gripping the water bottle. "We have to show everyone what she's doing." "Show who? June?" Paolo turned, his face hard in the glow of the monitors. "The Greywater PD, they're on Pike's payroll. The Port Authority. They're compromised. Essart Keene is wearing their vest. You take this stick to the wrong person, and it gets buried. We get buried and nothing changes. You don't just release this. You don't know who you're at war with. Releasing this now, without a plan, is how you burn the whole city to the ground." He was right. The system wasn't just broken, it was actively hostile. So we don't go to the system, I argued, my voice gaining strength. We go around it. We go to the people, to the North Shore Tribune. Rook stopped typing. Paolo looked at me, his brow furrowed. "I know a reporter there," I said. "Tay Ridley. He comes into the diner. He's young, he's hungry, and he hates the Port Authority. He's been digging into their safety contracts for a year. He's honest. An honest reporter," Paolo said, the words tasting like ash. "That's your play." "It's half of it." I said, "We create 2 packages. One, completely anonymous, goes to Tay. It'll be a bomb. It'll force the city to listen. The other, we give to Lyora Penn." "The Isard inspector," Paolo said, considering it. "Why her?" "Because she's the only one who didn't seem to be in on it. She looked genuinely surprised when Doyle mentioned Bay 711. Keene had to cut her off. She's clean. Or at least, she's not part of this. We give her the evidence through a back channel, a pincer move, like you said. One for the public, one for the law. They can't both ignore it." Paolo stared at me for a long, heavy minute. "Rook, prepare 2 encrypted drives, one for the press, one for the inspector." My phone, which I'd left on the desk, buzzed. A new message from a new unknown number. I opened it. My heart stopped. It was a photograph. Me and Paolo, on the balcony of the guest house, just last night. He was standing behind me, draping the wool throw over my shoulders. It was a dark, grainy, long-lens shot, but it was unmistakably us. The angle was intimate. It looked possessive. Beneath it, one line of text, "Choose a side." "Paolo," I whispered. He was at my side in an instant. He saw the photo. His entire body went rigid. The glass in his hand didn't tremble, but his knuckles went white. This wasn't a threat against his business. This was a threat against me, against us. They had been watching his home. "Rook," he said, his voice a low, controlled growl. "Get the plane ready." He turned to me, his eyes black with a cold fury I hadn't seen before. "You're leaving tonight, just for a week. We have a place in Montreal. You'll be safe there until I clean this up." I looked at the photo, at the violation, at the man in front of me, ready to hide me away like a precious, breakable thing. No, he blinked. This is not a negotiation. June, they've been on my property. They've targeted you. You are a liability they will neutralize. I've been running my whole life, I said, my voice shaking but hard as steel. I ran from foster homes. I ran from bad jobs. I ran from men like Doyle. I am not running anymore. They want me to run. They want to scare me. I'm not giving them the satisfaction. I looked him dead in the eye. I am standing my ground. This time, I fight back. He didn't speak. He just watched me, the anger in his eyes slowly being replaced by something else. A dawning, reluctant respect. They're watching us, I said, my mind clicking into place. That's their mistake. You can't watch someone without them watching you back. If they want me to choose a side, let's give them a reason to. I looked at Rook. Mara Keene wants a clean territory. What if she heard there was a new distributor moving in on the Saltworks warehouses? Someone independent. The Saltworks, Rook said. That's Kestrel territory, but it's been quiet. It's the perfect place for a trap. I said. We leak that a new player is making a deal for a major shipment, the agricultural goods from Starglow. We leak that the new player is me. Absolutely not, Paolo said, the words a flat rejection. It's too dangerous. You'll be the target. They'll kill you before you can say a word. No, they won't, I countered. Because I'm the one who supposedly has the leverage. I'm the new connection. Mara will want to meet me. She'll want to either cut me in or cut me out. Either way, she'll have to show her hand. She'll have to talk. This is insane, Paolo said, turning away. It's too personal. Your judgment is clouded. Is it? I shot back. Or is yours? Is this about the operation, or is this about what happened in the alley? Are you afraid I'll get hurt? Or are you afraid of what you feel? He turned back. His face a mask of stone. The silence in the room was deafening. Rook was studiously examining his monitors. We do this my way, I said, my voice quiet but absolute. We set the trap. We leak the intel. I wear a wire. We get Mara to admit it, to confirm the ledger, but we have a rule. My rule. He waited. I've spent my life watching men like you and Pike move people around like furniture. I won't be that. If this goes wrong, if any innocent person is put in danger, a security guard, a bystander, anyone who isn't in this room, we stop. We pull the plug. 3 clicks on the lighter. No questions asked. We walk away. Paolo looked at Rook, who was watching us, his expression unreadable. Then he looked back at me. He saw the iron in my spine. He saw that I was not the same woman he'd met in the diner. He gave a single, slow nod. Rook, Paolo said, his voice level. You heard her. It's her call. Set it up. The Saltworks was a skeleton of industry. The main warehouse was a vast, cavernous space, empty save for the thick cement pillars holding up the roof. The air was heavy with the smell of brine and rust. Old PA speakers, mounted high on the beams, hissed with static, playing no music, just the sound of an open, empty channel. The only light came from clusters of greenish, industrial-grade floods that cast long, distorted shadows, making the place feel both overlit and profoundly dark. I stood in the center of the floor. I wasn't June Maddox Waitress, I was the broker. My hair was pulled back. I was wearing the black raincoat Paolo had given me. A simple, dark outfit underneath. Tucked into my ear was a flesh-colored communication piece, a high-fidelity microphone that was also a micro camera, feeding everything I saw and heard back to Rook and Paolo, who were in a van half a mile away. The Raven lighter was a heavy, cold weight in my pocket. She was late. The hissing from the speakers was designed to unnerve, to fill the silence. Then I heard a single set of footsteps. Not a team, not a Kestrel crew. One person, Mara Keene, emerged from the shadows, hands in the pockets of her severe black coat. She looked as cold and hard as the cement floor. She stopped 10 yards from me, her eyes sweeping the empty space, looking for snipers, for backup. She found no one. You're brave, she said, her voice flat, echoing slightly. Or stupid. She took a few steps closer. Her eyes raked over me. dismissive. You don't belong to him. It wasn't a question, it was a judgment. I don't belong to anyone, I said, my voice steady, the microphone carrying every word. I belong to my choices. You're here because of one of them. You have the ledger, she said. I have access to it, I corrected. I'm here to broker the sale. My client gets the new shipping routes. You get your ledger back, and the Kestrels get their monopoly. Mara smiled, a thin, bloodless expression. He's been teaching you, but you've misunderstood the game, sweetheart. I don't buy things back. I take them. You can't take what you can't find, I countered. The data isn't on me. It's in a secure cloud. The deal is simple. You transfer the routing codes for the Saltworks pier to my client's account, and I give you the deletion key. I was talking, but my mind was elsewhere, in my ear. Rook's voice would have been screaming if he were anyone else. Instead, I'd heard a sharp intake of breath a moment ago, followed by a furious, whispered, "No." In the van, Paolo would have just learned the truth. As I stood there, bluffing a federal agent, Rook had been running a deep diagnostic on the Raven House servers. The breach, the photo of me and Paolo on the balcony, had been an inside job. And he'd found the back door. He'd found the signature. Vico Trent, Paolo's own lead systems engineer, the man who built his entire security network. He had been a Kestrel plant for 5 years. He was the one who had fed them the intel on Corax. He was the one who had put my name on the guards list at Bay 711. He was the one who had aimed the sniper. I heard Paolo's voice, not in my ear, but in my memory. A cold, flat statement, "I will handle the rest." I knew what Mafia justice looked like for a traitor, but I also knew I needed a witness. "The Kestrels are impatient," I said to Mara, my voice hardening. "Vico Trent is getting sloppy. He's starting to leave trails." I was fishing, using the name, and I saw her flinch, a microscopic, barely there tightening of her eyes. She knew him. "You don't know what you're talking about," she said, taking another step closer. "I know he planted the back door. I know he's your man on the inside." "Vico is a loose end," she hissed, dismissing him. "Just like you." She was close now, close enough for me to smell the faint scent of peppermint on her breath. She smiled again, that same reptile, thin smile. "You know why they like you, June. Why men like him get so obsessed with little broken birds like you," she whispered, her voice a venomous, intimate secret. "It's not because you're strong. It's because you're weak, because you make a man like Paolo Gattuso soft." Her hand came out of her pocket. It wasn't a gun. It was a knife, a thin, stiletto-like blade that caught the sickly green light. She lunged, not at my stomach, but at my face. I didn't even have time to flinch. A black shape materialized from the pillar behind me. Paolo. He had never been in the van. He moved without a sound, a ghost in a dark suit. He didn't grab her arm. He didn't strike her. He simply intercepted her wrist, his hand an iron clamp. Her forward momentum was stopped so fast, so completely, that her fingers spasmed open. The knife flew from her grasp. It spun, end over end, and thudded into a wooden support post, vibrating, a perfect deadly throw. No one had bled. The threat was just over, neutralized with a terrifying, absolute calm. Mara stared at her empty, tingling hand, then at Paolo, her eyes wide with genuine shock. She hadn't heard him. She hadn't even sensed him. "He's not soft," I said, my voice shaking, but clear. Mara's shock vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating fury. She knew she'd lost. "You shouldn't have come," she snarled at Paolo. "I had a contingency for you." A deafening klaxon suddenly split the air. Not the hissing PA, but a real, pulsing alarm. "Wah, wah, wah." "That wasn't me," Paolo said, his eyes scanning the exits. "No," Mara said, a triumphant smirk on her face. "It was me, through the huge open bay doors. We saw them, flashing blue and white lights. Not Isart, it was the Spatu, the port cops, 6 cruisers, blocking the only way out. I called in an anonymous tip," Mara said, pulling her FSCU badge from her pocket. "Hostage situation, armed intruders. Linked to the Gattuso organization. They've been waiting for my signal. You're trapped. Paolo. And you," she looked at me, "are my heroic rescue." It was her counter move. She had expected a double cross all along. Paolo didn't even look at her. "June, your rule?" he said. He was right. Innocent people. The Spatu cops, however dirty, were still just cops walking into a setup. I fumbled in my pocket. The lighter. Click, click, click. The abort signal. "Rook," Paolo said, his voice quiet, speaking into his lapel mic. "Vico, side door. Now, get him out. He's a witness." He had heard me. He had overruled his own code. Vico would live. "Armed police. Show me your hands." The shouts were coming from the entrance. Flashlights cutting beams through the dusty air. Paolo turned, putting his body between me and the arriving officers. He put his hands up, open and visible, and started walking. Calm as a man out for a stroll. "Walk with me, June," he said. "Don't run." He shielded me. I put my hands up, my good arm throbbing, the scraped one stinging. We walked, a slow, deliberate pace, toward the blinding flashlights and the screaming men. We were a portrait of non-aggression. "He's got a weapon!" Mara suddenly screamed from behind us, pointing at Paolo. Paolo stopped. He didn't turn. He just waited. "I see no weapon," one of the cops yelled back. "It's a setup." "Officers," Mara yelled again. "They're trying to escape." But it was too late. From the darkness outside the chain-link fence, a new, bright light flared, a single, powerful camera light, a man's voice, amplified by a small bullhorn, cut through the chaos. "This is Tay Ridley, live streaming for the North Shore Tribune. We are broadcasting from the perimeter of the salt works. What is the nature of this operation? Why is a federal agent on site with the Spatu?" "We're on the air. Officers. The city is watching." Tay. He'd gotten the package. He'd followed the tip. The cops with their guns trained on us hesitated. Their flashlights wavered. The dynamic had shattered. They weren't in a dark warehouse anymore. They were on a live, public stage. Mara Keene stood frozen, her face a mask of incandescent rage, caught between her lie and the lens. Paolo put his hand on the small of my back, a solid, grounding pressure. "Keep walking," he whispered, and we did. We walked right through the middle of them, two unarmed civilians in a sea of aimed guns, and not a single shot was fired. The Saltworks broadcast by Tay Ridley was a lit match on a gas leak. It didn't end the fight, it started the war. By 3 a.m, Inspector Leora Penn, using the media firestorm as political air cover, had officially detained Mara Keene. The sufficient evidence I had provided anonymously gave her just enough legal standing, but the win was razor thin. By 5 a.m, the Kestrels retaliated. They didn't use bullets, they used the press. The story that hit the airwaves was clean, simple, and devastatingly false. Vico Trent, Paolo's traitorous engineer, was now painted as a state-certified systems analyst and a protected government informant. The Kestrels claimed Paolo Gattuso had abducted him from the saltworks to prevent him from testifying. The narrative flipped. We were no longer the whistleblowers. We were the villains. By sunrise, Raven House was an island. The Greywater Municipal Safety Bureau, citing the ongoing hostage investigation, had blockaded the gates. They weren't trying to get in. They were trapping us. Media vans formed a perimeter, their long lens cameras aimed at our windows. "They're locking us down," Paolo said, his voice a low growl. He was in his study, staring at a monitor that showed a live feed of the front gate. "They'll try to get a warrant for the house next. They'll use the kidnapping charge as probable cause. Vico is secure," Rook reported, his voice tight. He had extracted the engineer and was now back inside the blockade with us. "But he's panicked. He knows what they're capable of." "His testimony is useless if they paint him as a victim of coercion," Paolo said. "They'll discredit him. They'll discredit me. It's my word against theirs. And I'm a Gattuso." I looked at the television. Tay Ridley's broadcast was on a loop, but the chyron underneath had changed. My face, a grainy still from the Saltworks footage, was on screen. Mystery woman at center of Port Authority conspiracy. "They're controlling the story," I said, my voice quiet. "They're making Vico the victim." "He's a traitor," Paolo spat. "But they won't discredit me." I said. He turned. "What? I'm not a criminal. I'm not a known associate. I'm a waitress. I'm the one Cal Doyle assaulted. I'm the one who was at the diner, at the ferry, at the warehouse. I'm the witness. They can't silence. Silence, Paolo scoffed. They'll crucify you. They'll paint you as a mob mall, a liar. Not if I do it in public. Not if I do it live. His eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Greywater City Hall, a public hearing. Tay Ridley's report gave the city council just enough spine to call for an emergency inquiry this morning. I'm going to testify. No, the word was absolute. Absolutely not. It's a circus. It's a stage play for politicians. They'll have kestrel plants in the crowd. They will tear you apart. They will if I hide. I shot back, turning to face him. The target is already on my back. They sent that photo. They know who I am. Hiding in your fortress just confirms their story. Going there is the only way to win. I cannot protect you in there. He was pacing now, his control cracking, the animal rage coming to the surface. It's a sterile box. No rook, no angles, just cameras and microphones and men in suits who are already on Pike's payroll. I don't need you to protect me. My voice was shaking, but I held my ground. I need you to trust me. He stopped, his back to me. This isn't trust. This is suicide. I walked up to him. He was a wall of tense, furious muscle. I put my good hand on his cheek, forcing him to look at me. His skin was hot. His eyes were black, burning with a fear I had never seen in him. It was fear for me. Paolo, look at me. He did. You've been in control your whole life. You move every piece on the board. I am not one of your pieces. I am your partner in this. If you... I swallowed, the words thick. If you love me, you have to trust me. Trust me to see this through. This is my fight. He stared at me. The fury in his eyes didn't vanish, but it fractured. The hard, cold mask of the dawn softened, replaced by the raw terror of the man. He covered my hand with his thumb tracing my bruised jawline. This is a mistake, he whispered. It's the only move we have, I whispered back. He pulled me to him. It wasn't a gentle embrace. It was a desperate, crushing grip, his hand locking at the small of my back, the other tangling in my hair, pulling my head against his chest. He buried his face in my hair. After this, he muttered, his voice thick. We're gone. The plane. Montreal. I mean it, June. After we win, I corrected, my voice muffled against his suit. He pulled back, just enough to look at me, and then he kissed me. It was not the desperate, defiant kiss from the alley. This was slow and deep and agonizing. It was a kiss that tasted of fear and brandy and the impossible, suffocating weight of his world. It was a promise of after and a goodbye, just in case. His hands gripped my waist, pulling me so tight I could barely breathe, his body hard against mine. I kissed him back, pouring every ounce of my new, fragile strength into it. I was anchoring him. I was telling him I would not break. He whispered my name, a low, ragged prayer, as he moved us backward, away from the monitors, away from the war, toward the heavy oak door of his private study. The door clicked shut, leaving the rest of the world outside. The next morning, Greywater City Hall was a zoo. Tay Ridley had done his job. The special civic inquiry on port safety was the biggest story in the state, and it was being broadcast live. I walked through the press of bodies alone. Lyora Penn, her face a mask of exhaustion, sat at the main table. The council chambers were packed, hot with camera lights. I saw Rook standing by the main exit, his arms crossed, a mountain of silent warning. Paolo was nowhere to be seen. He was keeping his promise. He was trusting me. I took the stand, my good hand resting on the Bible. The microphone hissed. I told them everything. I started with the harbor and hearth. I told them about Cal Doyle. I told them about my bruised face. I told them about the kestrels, the threats, the break-in. I was afraid my whole life, I said, my voice clear and carrying in the vast, silent room. I was afraid of being broke, of being hurt, of being worthless. And then I realized, that's what they want. They need you to be afraid. It's the only way they can control you. I am not afraid anymore. "And what?" a councilman asked. "Do you say to the allegations that you are associated with the head of the Gattuso crime family?" Before I could answer, the chamber doors burst open. "I demand to make a statement, Mara Keene." She was in cuffs, flanked by 2 ESART agents. She looked composed, triumphant. "Miss Keene, you are not scheduled to—" Leora Penn began. "I'm surrendering myself to full federal custody," Mara announced, ignoring Penn speaking directly to the network cameras. "And I demand full protection under the federal witness program." The room erupted. "Yes, I was involved," she shouted over the noise. "But I was not the one in charge. The entire operation, the Kestrel Alliance, the money laundering, it was all orchestrated by a ranking official inside ESART itself." I looked at Leora Penn. Her face was ashen. She had just been betrayed by her own organization. "She's lying," a man shouted from the public gallery. "This woman," he was pointing at me, "is the real criminal. She's the girlfriend of a mob boss. She's the manipulator. Look at the screens." The large multimedia screens on the wall flickered to life. It was me. Grainy, black and white footage from the diner. Me in a booth, laughing, leaning in close to a customer. Me in the back hallway, taking cash. It was Cal Doyle's doctored video. The audio was muffled, suggestive. It looked damning. The room gasped. I could feel my credibility, my entire life, shattering. I looked for Rook. He was gone. I was completely, utterly alone. Paolo. He wasn't storming in. He wasn't saving me. He was trusting me. I stood up, my hand gripping the edge of the podium. "Stop the video." My voice was quiet, but it cut through the noise. The technician hesitated. "Stop it. That video is a fraud, and I have the proof." I reached into my bag and pulled out the USB drive, the one from Vico. "What you are seeing," I said, my voice ringing with cold, hard anger, "is a fabrication. What I have here is the truth." I walked to the technician's table and slammed the drive down. "This is the original, time-stamped server data from the Harbor and Hearth. This is the complete audio log from Bay 711, where Mara Keene discussed her clean territory. And this," I said, my eyes finding Leora Penn, "is the digital signature and system diary of Vico Trent, the kidnapped engineer. He is alive, he is safe, and he is ready to testify against the real boss, the man Mara Keene is so afraid of." The doctored video vanished. The screens went blank. The chamber exploded. The council chair banged his gavel. "Recess?" "We are in recess." Leora Penn pushed through the chaos, her face grim. She grabbed my arm. "Where is he? Where is Vico?" "Safe," I said. He gave me a name. The name of the man he was reporting to. The man Mara was meeting. "Who?" He called him Rusk. "He said they always meet at the Pier Annex." Leora Penn's eyes went wide. She knew the name. She let go of my arm and pulled out her phone, already walking away. "Get me a strike team," she barked into the phone. "Now, and secure a warrant for the Pier Annex. Top priority. I want Deputy Director Hale Rusk's location, and I want it 10 minutes ago." The storm broke over the Pier Annex, as if the sky itself was finally passing judgment on Greywater. Rain came down in solid, driving sheets, and thunder cracked open the night, echoing the chaos from City Hall. Leora Penn had moved fast. We weren't a unified force. We were 3 separate armies converging on the same target in the dark. Penn's clean ESART team, the ones she trusted, came in hard and fast, securing the main entrance. Tay Ridley and his news van were half a block down, his camera aimed, the live feed a beacon in the storm. And somewhere in the shadows, I knew Rook and Paolo's men were moving, silent ghosts in the rain, not allied with the law, but parallel to it. I was with Penn, my rain-soaked coat plastered to my skin, the Raven lighter a heavy weight in my pocket. We burst into the main sorting facility, a vast, echoing space of steel and shadow. "Inspector Penn," a voice called out, calm and amused. He stepped out from behind a stack of shipping containers. He was dressed in a perfect, expensive suit, his gray hair immaculate despite the humidity. It was Deputy Director Hale Rusk, the man who had been Leora's boss, the man who was supposed to be the definition of clean. "You've been led on quite a chase. haven't you?" Following the lead of a traumatized waitress. He ignored Leora, his eyes cold and assessing. Found me. "June Maddox," he said, his voice fatherly, laced with poison. "You've been through a terrible ordeal. This man Gattuso. He's used you, manipulated you. But it's over now. You're safe. My team is right outside. We can have you in federal witness protection in an hour. A new name, a new life. All you have to do is stop talking." The threat was clear. Silence for safety. A voice cut through the sound of the rain lashing the tin roof. It came from above. "She is not a bargaining chip." I looked up. Paolo. He was standing on a steel catwalk, 30 feet above the concrete floor. He was unarmed, his hands open at his sides, his black suit soaked. He was looking right at Rusk, and his voice was amplified by the vast, cavernous space, carrying clear as a bell. Tay Ridley's long-range microphone would be catching every word. Rusk's calm finally broke, his face twisted in rage. "You—" At that exact moment, a side door slammed open. Not Essert, it was the Kestrels. Arlen Pike at the lead, guns raised, finally realizing their protector was being cornered. "What the hell is this?" "Rusk," Pike yelled. Rusk was trapped. Cops at the front, Kestrels at the side, Paolo above, and me in the middle. "Rook, now," Paolo said, his voice a quiet command, not meant for us, but for his man. A heavy thunk clang echoed, and the entire warehouse was plunged into blinding white light. Rook had hit the main circuit, killing the dim utility lights and throwing on the massive, overhead ceiling floods. It was like a stadium. Rusk, Pike, Penn, everyone was caught, exposed, bathed in light for Tay's camera. Rusk screamed. He wasn't a politician anymore, and he was a cornered rat. He ripped a pistol from an ankle holster. He didn't aim at Paolo. He didn't aim at Leora. He aimed at me. He aimed at the witness who wouldn't shut up. I saw the muzzle flash. Time stopped. I didn't feel a push. I felt an impact. Paolo was there. He hadn't run down the stairs. He had leaped from the catwalk, crashing into me. A solid wall of muscle and bone. He took us both down to the concrete, his body completely covering mine. I heard the smack of the bullet, a wet, heavy sound that was too close. He grunted, a sharp, choked sound of pure agony. He rolled off me, clutching his arm, blood dark and thick gushing between his fingers. He'd taken the round in his left shoulder, high, but he was already pushing himself back up, his face pale and slick with sweat, putting himself between me and Rusk again. He was still standing. I didn't scream. My hands, the one in the brace and the one that was scraped, moved. I grabbed a clean rag from a nearby workbench, the diner training, the instinct to fix, and shoved it against the wound. Pressure. I grunted, pushing with all my weight. "Lights 3, 2, 1, I screamed at Leora. It was the signal. The prearranged code. He's exposed. Move. Penn didn't hesitate. "Essert, go." The clean team burst in. Flashbangs rolling, the Kestrels, confused, returned fire, but not at the cops at Rusk. It was over in 10 seconds. Rusk was cuffed. Pike was down. As the smoke cleared, a black sedan rolled up to the open bay door. The back window lowered. Mara Keene, still in cuffs, looked out, a small, cold smile on her face. Tay Ridley shoved a microphone in. "Agent Keene, who is Rusk, who owns the North Current Foundation." Mara looked right at the camera, her final move as a double agent. "The North Current Foundation, it's his," she said, nodding at Rusk. "It was always Hail Rusk. I have the account numbers." The knot was tied. The adrenaline left. I looked down. Paolo was on his knees, his face gray, then he crumpled sideways onto the concrete. "Paolo!" I scrambled to him, my hands covered in his blood. "EMTs. We need EMTs." I was laughing. Or maybe I was crying. I couldn't tell. My face was wet with rain and tears. He was alive. We were alive. The medics rushed in. As they started cutting away his suit, his eyes found mine. He managed a weak, painful smile. His hand, the good one, found my wrist. He squeezed. Tay's microphone was close, catching the sound. "I told you," Paolo whispered, his voice a hoarse, breathless rasp, but clear enough for the mic. "I'd handle the rest." The sun rose over Greywater, and for the first time, it felt like it was actually cleaning something. The ESART announcement came at 6 a.m., a full-scale cleanup of the port, citing the arrest of Deputy Director Rusk. Cal Doyle, seeing the news, had vanished. His truck was found abandoned near the bus station, the Kestrel Syndicate, with Pike gone and their federal protection shattered, imploded. 3 weeks later, the Harbor and Hearth was open. It was clean. Sal had bought it, using an anonymous loan that had appeared in his bank account. He'd fixed the neon sign. I was working the morning shift. The bruise was gone. My wrist was out of the brace. I was just pouring coffee when the bell chimed. Paolo walked in. He looked normal. No suit, just jeans and a dark shirt. His left arm was in a clean, white sling. He sat at the counter, the same stool he'd taken that first night. He didn't say anything. He just reached into his pocket with his good hand and placed the steel Raven lighter on the counter. I looked at the lighter. I looked at him. I smiled. In front of Sal. In front of the morning truckers. In front of the whole wide world. I put my hand over his. He interlaced his fingers with mine. We didn't have to hide. A customer opened the door behind him to leave. The morning sun, bright and unfiltered, flooded the diner. And I knew this wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We'd love to know where you're listening from. So comment below, share your thoughts, and let's connect. Please subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories. Like this video, and give it some extra support by hitting that hype button to help this story reach even more listeners.